Awesome. Just a couple of more minutes, then we can get rolling. Hey everyone, morning or evening, wherever you guys are. Welcome to the fourth 112 release meeting. Quick housekeeping notes: if you guys haven't added your name to the attendees list, please do so, and I can ping the, if I can find the chat. Okay, there you go. The meeting notes. I pinged the link to the meeting notes in the chat. Right. And for those of you wondering where Tim is, Tim, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he ran a marathon and he is now driving down I-5. So I'm going to be running the release meeting today. This is my first time, so fingers crossed. Is that Tim? Okay.
Yeah, I am dialed in. Thank you very much for running things. And yep, you have it right. I'm in the car, so I'll mostly just be listening.
Awesome. So if I apologize in advance if I kind of run this all messed up, but it's my first time, so I hope you guys will excuse me for that. So we can get started. Before going over the usual updates, CI signal, bugs, and feature, there were a couple of pieces of status updates that we wanted to run by the release team. The first is tomorrow, end of day tomorrow, is our feature freeze. So that's our first calendar deadline that we are hitting. So by tomorrow, we'd expect all the features that's going in 112 to be updated in the K8's feature repo. This helps us get stock of what features that are going to go in 112 and also kind of get a handle on docs, test, and release note status for the feature. Later in the call, maybe we can get an update from Stephen on the status of the features and where he and the features team might need some help. So that's tomorrow. Tim sent out an email on Friday to the SIG leads, letting them know that the freeze is coming up and calling for some action on their part. I'm assuming we'll send out another broader email sometime today or tomorrow to Kubernetes dev about the same. But I can follow up with Tim. I can follow up with you offline, Tim, about that. The second piece of update is our alpha cut. That is also tomorrow, end of day tomorrow. So the way it goes is, I believe, we wait on the CI signal to be green before we can go on with the cut. But that said, considering this is alpha and considering that we would be going over a new script for cutting the branch, and considering that this is the first time a non-Googler will be doing the end-to-end flow, Tim's preference was to go ahead and try this out tomorrow, provided the tests are not super broken and we can't cut a build at all. So the idea is we'll still go ahead and cut an alpha tomorrow to just do a dry run of the script and see how things go. And worst come worst, it'll surface newer issues that kind of wants our attention sooner than later. So we'd still want to go ahead and cut the alpha, but I'd like to hear from maybe Doug in the call and everybody else if they have any concerns around this.
Hey everybody. I don't have any concerns, but I guess I still need to go through that playbook a couple times.
Yeah.
So once you create the first alpha, then we have the branch, and we just start doing fast forwards and all that good stuff, right?
Yeah. I think we do it. I think we cut it around end of day tomorrow PST. So yeah, we can always coordinate on Slack.
Okay.
Cool. Anyone, any concerns around this? Okay. If not, we can move on to CI signal. Mohammed?
Yeah. So as far as CS signal is concerned, I would say the status is currently overall status would be yellow. We do have a bunch of issues that were raised in the previous week that were fixed, and there are a couple of new issues that have arisen. In the upgrade side, it is mostly GCI, GKE, and SIG instrumentation and cluster lifecycle, and it's kind of similar with the master blocking as well, although there I would like to add SID, ACKPI machinery tests as well, and a couple of networking stuff. Other than that, I have raised issues against most of them. There are a couple more tests for which I've noticed failures. I'm going to observe them for a little bit more. If I still observe failures, then I'll raise issues against them as well. Otherwise, I guess most of the status is yellow right now.
Okay. Couple of questions. Is there a link to a tracking sheet, Mohammed, so that we all can take a look at what tests are currently breaking or the corresponding issues?
Yeah, I will. There's a sheet. It is there in the weekly report as well, but I link it right now in the chat as well. So
if you could link it to the meeting notes, I've added a bullet point for that. So that way. So quick. Thank you. Quick question about the failures. Are these flaky tests or are they continuously failing? Especially the great ones?
Most of there are tests which are continuously failing for some time. There are flaky tests as well, but then some of them are stabilized. Like I had raised issues against them, but they got stabilized. So I guess that closes them. But right now it is mostly broken stuff which has overall failures.
Okay.
So it seems like the longest failing ones are related to kubeadm. Have we poked them? Like, what's their response on this right now?
They're working on it. Like if you look at the issue that is raised against kubeadm, they are working on fixing the thing. I think they were discussing about removing the test or something like that, but I don't know what their exact plan is. But right now, I would say is that the update from Neolite is that they're working on it. They're working on it, fixing it, and there are like a couple of PRs. Sorry, there was a PR and there was an issue that was raised. One PR got merged and another issue was closed, but the tests are still not green yet.
So is it do you know if it's a test issue versus a real product issue that they're looking to fix?
They did say that they were talking about removing it, but I don't know whether they're going to do that or not. I'll get back on them and
yeah. Let me just give my little I have a dream speech. I have a dream that one day we can't cut a release until every test on that dashboard called release master blocking is green. Because otherwise that dashboard is filled with tests that aren't actually blocking, and that makes it harder for us to automate this problem away. So like we really, let's go chase this down.
I'm looking at master blocking and I see, as Saran said, the kubeadmin one. And then there are a couple of GCI and GK things that are just failing on a couple of tests continuously. So I think if we have the tracking sheet with these tests and the issues tracking them, it'll kind of give us a good visibility on who is looking into that, on fixing those.
I've linked the sheet in the meeting thing. Awesome. In the release meeting notes. So I think the second point I linked to issues of tracking sheet. So I have put it in there.
Awesome. I'm also looking at the downgrade tests. Looks like a couple of, especially the downgrade ones are also, they're failing on the downgrade itself, not just on miscellaneous test failure.
Yep.
Any updates from them, Mohammed?
I have pinged on SIG testing and updated them that there are test failures. I'll ping them again today and see if I can get updates from them.
Perfect. So if you need any help following up with them one-on-one, and if you think we can crowdsource some help among the release team, more than happy to help you there, whoever has some time. So if you need help, if you could just indicate that in Slack or in the tracking sheet, we can do similar to what you guys did in 111 with me. That'll be useful. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like I'll for these tests, I'll ping the people. If I don't get any reply within a couple of days, by tomorrow or something, I will ping you guys.
Yeah, especially the Kubeadmin and the downgrade tests. I think we might need to get a status on before we can cut alpha. Again, alpha is expected to be buggy, but then if downgrade is failing, we really don't want to proceed until we know what's going on.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next up is bug update, but I think Gwyn is out right now. So we can move on to features. Stephen?
Hello. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. As of the last time I sent out an email regarding features, we were at 27 features. About 18 of those were actively tracked. People said they were going to happen, and 9 of those were, hey, they may happen. So since then, we've kind of bumped up to 48 features. So that is the feature inflation that happens within the first month and a half. I expect that to go down within the next 3 weeks or so. But as of now, that's kind of where we're at. I am still pinging people for things that have no milestones. But as of tomorrow, we're at feature freeze, so anything following that will require an exception. We're doing really great in terms of feature collection, just from the perspective of getting them in sooner rather than later and being really naggy to people. So thank you everyone who's been working on that, especially Kendrick. That's me.
Awesome. So do you guys want any help with pinging SIGs, or I think you guys have it all in control?
So for the most part, like you were mentioning before, for the most part, it's something that we can do asynchronously. I think now that we're in a much better place prior to feature freeze, I'll collate a list of issues that kind of have no status on them, and we can go out to the SIGs and ping that way.
Oh, and I was looking at the feature tracking spreadsheet, Stephen, and it looks like there's good information on dogs, if dogs is needed or not, but I kind of don't see much information on test status for each of these features. Do we need to follow up with SIGs on that, or do you think it's a little too early for them to figure that out?
Sorry, I was talking on mute. So yeah, usually in the first month or so, we don't have good signal on exactly what they're deciding with the tests. Are the tests maybe referencing something from prior release? So we can, I would say maybe in 2 weeks would be the right time to start driving that down.
Okay. All right. Again, anytime you think you need help, discussing about tests with them, do let us know.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Anyone, do you guys happen to know an update on the bugs? If not, we can skip it for this week, and Gwen can retrospectively come and add the status here.
I don't personally have updates for bugs. So.
Okay. All right. The next one was, Aaron, do you mind giving us a quick update on the CI toil that you helped reduce over the last week?
Sure. Yeah. So Like I have this broad overarching goal to reduce the number of kind labels to the magic number of 7 plus or minus 2. But the things that are specifically relevant to this team right now are I finally got rid of the priority / failing test label. So there are only, what, 5 priorities now? Critical, urgent, important, soon, important, long-term, backlog, and awaiting evidence. I forget the order. So that's it, ordered list, great. No more like 2 priority labels assigned to failing tests. Instead, you do priority whatever you think is most important. Personally, if I were CI Signal, I'd mark everything as critical urgent because a failing test is probably blocking us from cutting a release. And kind failing test. Kind failing test means the test is consistently failing. Kind flake means the test is flaking. That'll help us identify those 2 different kinds of failures, but failing tests are probably more important and easier to troubleshoot, so you should go after those first, or at least that would be my recommendation. I linked the community issue in the doc. It involved a pull request test infra to migrate the label, so anything that was priority failing test is now kind failing test, and all the docs in the SIG release and community repos have been updated accordingly. I think that's it. Any questions?
Oh yeah, there's this thing where that's also when I label an issue as kind failing test, it still complains that the milestone labels are incomplete. So it is asking me for either kind bug or kind
Features.
it complains that the milestone labels are incomplete if I say kind
So
failing.
can you link me an example of which thing is complaining to you?
Aaron, I CC'd you on the issue this morning. I can.
Link sent directly to me. Your GitHub notifications aren't.
Let me try.
I'm trying to scrape through them on a daily basis, but like, admittedly, GitHub notifications should be treated as they're going off into the void, especially if you require. They're UDP, right? They're fire and forget.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I can. I can dig that bug after this meeting and then ping you.
Okay, because I will happily work that. My goal is to like reduce the amount of nagging that's thrown at you. I don't know if this is the meeting to do it, by the way, but there was talk of like, is that milestone bot that goes through and comments on every issue about all those labels being super duper correct? Like, is that actually helpful? Or could we reduce toil and noise if we turn that off or figure out how to do that? But yeah. I don't want to sidetrack us on that today.
Yeah. In my past experience, I found it useful when it kind of told me that these labels were missing. But then when it said, oh, everything is up to date, that one was like super noisy. I knew that those things were up to date. So, but yeah.
Yeah, we should put that up as an agenda item for SIG release if we haven't already.
Okay. I'm just going to, all right. So next up, do we have? I think that brings us to the end of our planned updates. Does anyone else have any questions / concerns or updates?
So from my side, I'm kind of trying to consolidate some of the documentation in SIG release. So at this point, now that we've broken into like role handbooks, there's also some documentation kind of like top level that should be reviewed by each of the roles. So like the features lead role, that information is no longer accurate compared to what's in the features role handbook, right? So you should be working to consolidate some of the information around your role. So take a look at the README for SIG release / release team / README, right? Take a look at that and see if any of your stuff is inaccurate. I've opened up an issue in SIG release. In addition to that, we had some discussion around milestone maintainers and what we should be doing with that team, when it should be updated, who should have access to it. There's also a PR up for that. Aaron, I'll ping you separately just for you to take a look at that and kind of drop your feedback on that PR. Outside of that, I think I'm good personally.
My only ask would be you take the issue you filed, which I'll link in the agenda. I would go ahead and assign everybody who's on the current release team to do that.
Okay, perfect. Oh, right. That's kind of an ask from you too, the ephemera folder within SIG release. If everyone can be looking at the ephemera folder and figuring out what can be removed and actively working on removing it, that would be super. That would make Aaron happy too, I'm pretty sure.
Awesome. I am really lagging in taking notes, so I will update it post. I'll update the notes with all this discussion post this meeting. Okay. Okay. Anyone else before we go on to the test grid demo? Cool. Mohammed, do you want to do a quick demo of test grid? How you go about finding and filing issues?
Okay.
Cool. I think you can share your screen. Go. I don't think I'm not able to hear you. You muted.
Yeah, Zoom shows you as muted.
Fine now.
Joys of a multi-monitor setup. Where did my window go?
Yeah, I know. Sometimes this full screen one also is a pain.
Yeah, there's a setting you can use to prevent it from kicking you into full screen whenever somebody shares. I forget where it is, but it's maybe my favorite feature, second only to not automatically turning on the camera and microphone as soon as you join a meeting.
Yeah.
How do you get out? If you go up to the top of the screen that you're sharing, there should a thing should like drop down.
Yeah.
There should be a stop share thing there.
There's a view options one, and maybe there's a drop down next to it.
At least on Mac, the thing to enter full screen is Command-Shift-F, so maybe it's Control-Shift-F on Windows or something. That might get you out of it. Okay. Technical difficulties.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So this actually reminds me of something. It might be useful, regardless of what we go through today, to make a video of this, and maybe we could clip video out of the video so maybe we get the technical difficulties sorted. But this might be a useful thing to post to the YouTube channel.
The test grid demo?
Yeah, just how one goes about using it would probably be more broadly useful to others too.
Sure. Aaron, did your coupon talk?
I didn't actually cover running through and clicking it. If you don't mind, I'm kind of interested if the person who works primarily on test grid here at Google would be interested in doing that sort of run through, but otherwise, like, we all seem to be super busy doing different things, so if somebody wants to make a video, I'm probably not going to say no.
Yeah. Yeah, I can get the test grid person to talk to us or have a video that we all can look at.
Like that idea of running through and clicking through all the things is something I've debated on. Like, I've done that through community meetings in the past, and apparently people have gone back and linked to those to refer to, like, hey, look at all the stuff our test infra can do. Mm-hmm. But part of me also wonders, like, why isn't this stuff written down? I mean, for me personally, it's way easier to just ramble on and click through stuff randomly. I don't know if it's easier for people to consume that way or if they prefer to see things distilled down into clearly written docs, et cetera, et cetera.
Makes sense. Okay, let's wait for 5 more minutes, and if Mohammed is still having issues, then maybe we could do this offline and then just post a video.
One of the cool things in a video, perhaps versus just a write-up, is that you have the ability to look at the live data and can kind of say, like, okay, here's what the grid shows, and this part isn't green, it's caught my eye, so I'm going to click on it, and here's what we see, and kind of go through that experiential workflow. And I think that sort of stuff is especially relatable to people and helps kind of convey the message.
Yeah.
I could totally do that right now. I just don't want to. Mohammed said he would do it, so I kind of want to let him go through that. Oh, there he is.
Okay.
Yay!
Can you guys see something now?
We can hear you.
You can't see anything?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, able to see you. Could you try interacting with your screen so that it's not frozen?
Okay.
Yeah, you gotta share your screen again. We lost your screen share.
Oh, okay. Sorry, first time sharing on Zoom. Okay, desktop.
Cool.
You can see now?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So this is kind of what the Kubernetes test grid looks like. So we have various branches here for master blocking, master upgrade, and all the other kinds of tests. Like for each and every branch, we have different areas. So all is like all the tests, blocking tests for each and every version. Like when we cut 1.12, there will be a 1.11 or 1.12 all in blocking and stuff. So that is basically filtering based on category. For CS signal, I would say this and this are important: master blocking and master upgrade. So you guys can see that there are a bunch of tests that are failing here, and some are passing, and all of that stuff. So so each of these is a category of tests. So the conformance tests, for example, or the AWS tests and stuff like that. So for example, over here we have tests failing on the GCI GKE, and it actually tells you what are the failing tests in the overall grid itself. So this is actually a good picture where you can, without going into the actual grid itself, you can go ahead and tell that we have failing tests which we need to look into. So looking at this window itself, I know that I need to go and look at GCI GKE tests because there is an overall failure. So tests can fail, can be flaky, can fail a number of times and stuff, but a test is considered failing only when there is an overall failure on it. You can see over here there's an overall failure. You can see wherever there are failing tests, there is overall everywhere. So as soon as you see that, you go to that particular test. Let's say I go to GCI GKE plugin failure, and you have the grid. So the test grid, it's actually based on the category. So we have various categories even listed up here. So when I go to this particular category, you can see that there is the tests themselves that are running here, and there is instantial occurrence of that test. So test occurred at 8:15, test occurred at 6:14, test occurred at 4:13. So this gives you an over the period view of the entire test. So this is failing on SIG scheduling. You can see that it actually has a categorization. In most cases, you will be able to tell which SIG the test is by just looking at this. There are cases where that might not be enough. Some tests, like up test, for example, they don't tell that it's a particular SIG. So in those cases, we need to actually dig in more. But usually in these cases, you just look at this and you know that the test is failing. So let's say by looking at this grid, I can say that I need to go and look deeper into the test itself. So if you click on any particular element on the grid, it actually shows you the failures themselves. So we have the logs, we have the command that was executed for the test, and all of that stuff shown over here. So you can also see that there were 17 pass tests and there were skip tests and all that stuff here. So this basically is giving you the actual error log, like where the test failed. You can see the logs over here. So this test is has an error over here, a Golang error over here. So this this is actually helpful for the person who's going to actually go in and dig into the issue and see that, okay, I need to find out what the test failed, where the test failed, so that I can actually fix it. So this is one of the places where he can get actual information and say that, okay, this is my error, this is the command that ran, these are the instances that it ran, and all that stuff. And you can actually go and see the test history, and you can actually view the log files as well. So you can actually click on this, and it shows you the logs, and you can actually go ahead and take a look at the if you click if I check these boxes. If I want to see the kernel log, I can check on kern.log over here, and it will show that log as well. You can see that it got reloaded, and it is going to show me the kernel logs over here. So I can actually take the logs. Of course, are the most important things in debugging any issues. So you just observe the logs. You are the programmer, you would have written the logs correctly, so you should be able to figure out what is wrong if you've done your logging correctly. In most cases, that's helpful. If you want, you can take a look at more logs. You can also take a full log of every particular entry, and you can also go for the timestamp. You can say that over the period, how the like what the test results were. Of course, you can actually filter stuff here, right? So I can say allow iPhone privileged. Okay, so this is digging into the tests. You can there is also another very useful tool, that is the Kubernetes. This is the Kubernetes, which actually gives you an overall view of the tests. So how do I use this? So basically, I go to a particular failing test. Let's say the SIG release test. Sorry, okay. So there is, for example, let's say this thing, parallel failing. I click on this particular test, and then you can see this string, right? CI Kubernetes E2 EGC. So you copy this, and sorry, not used to touchpad. Okay, so copy this thing, and you paste it on your Kubernetes.
Just one quick thing. That's the triage. The view that you are in right now. That's that we call Kubernetes, and this one's the triage dashboard.
Triage dashboard, yeah.
Yes.
So if you just say that, so that's our job. So whatever you see up here, right? That's the job that I wanted to filter by, and I just took it here and I pasted it here, and it gives me the overtime triage of the particular test. So the particular job, I can actually drill down further. I can say which test, for example. Let's say I want to filter admission. This sometimes will not work. Generally, most cases it works, but you will see in this case, sometimes it might not filter correctly. So you can try to cut down the string and all that stuff and try to get it filtered. I've tried it with this one, it doesn't work. But for most cases, you will see that you actually can get quite clear results by just drilling down further. You can actually use even the failure test and all of that stuff. So this actually allows you to see, if you look at this, it actually shows you the every single run, what happened, and you can actually see the overall test failures, what they look like, what is the error that came, and how often it failed, and all of that stuff. So, for example, you can see that there is a test failure here that happened. There was a spike here. So this was when the test failed. And which test failed? You can see this is the test that failed and when it failed. So and which was the job that it failed. And generally, if you don't specify a test, it will just take it as test. So this is something that actually helps. It is something that actually helps you to debug this. Like you can actually see what are the errors that occurred and when they occurred, and all of that stuff. So and generally, so this can sometimes help you to actually figure out where it failed. So, for example, there is, let's say this auth is not labeled here, so you can actually, by looking at the logs, you can sometimes tell which was the sig that you can actually go back to that file, find out the owner, and figure out who owns that test and stuff like that. So, yeah. Any questions?
A couple of things that I found useful here when I did 111 was more that, could you just scroll up to the top, please?
Yeah.
I kind of use this more to see the trend of the bugs. Like when did it start failing, or did it fail? This was the same test flaky during previous releases. One way you could do that is there is a date text box, Mohammed. Have you next right there? Yeah.
Yeah.
You can specify the date range where you're trying to look for failures. So basically, if you give it snapshots the last 2 weeks of data here.
Yeah.
If you choose like a previous release, or a previous older date, it's going to snapshot data from like 2 weeks around that time. So that was super useful with the triage dashboard. Yeah. And you can also drill down based on the SIG itself, like the colored boxes on top. That one's useful too.
Yes. Yeah. You can actually just click on these and you get
red. Yeah.
You can also say that in like error message total count by last day. So when was the last failure it happened, or the total count. And you can also say error message. So it gives prior to the error message, gives you the entire error message.
Yep.
Entire log. That can be helpful for further debugging. I hope I didn't go too fast.
So there's also a little trick on the test grid. I'm unable to see what you're doing just listening, and I don't think you covered this one, but it allows you to see the code commits that change between when a test ran was succeeding and one that was failing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you show that one? Okay.
Mohammed, if you go to the master blocking, in one of the failures, I saw the changes link. You probably point them to that.
Yeah, there are changes linked to each other.
Yeah, I think that's what Tim is referring to.
Yeah, you can see changes are linked here.
Yeah.
You can actually go here and you can see what the code that changed between the last successful run and the current failed run.
Yeah.
This is actually quite useful. Like you can this is more, I would say, more useful to someone who wants to debug the issue, but it can be helpful when you're in the CI/CD role as well, to figure out what to drill down to the PR that broke the issue and broke the test and stuff.
The only thing I would add more is if you go to the upgrade dashboards, Mohammed, you want to talk about the different failures that could happen in an upgrade test, so that looking at it, they would know if it's actually an upgrade or downgrade issue versus like a miscellaneous test failure after the fact of that, after the upgrade.
Okay, so basically we can see over here that these are all failures in upgrade. So upgrade refers to both upgrade as well as downgrade. So you can see here that so for example, there is SIG instrumentation failure over here, right? So this basically means that this is a MISC failure test. So if you don't see this, like if you see only an overall and a test failure or a skew test failure, and that's it. So in those cases, it is very likely not a MISC upgrade. It is probably a failure from the testing infrastructure itself.
For example, if you go to the downgrade job.
Yeah, downgrade. This thing, right?
You can also click on the red text in the summary. Yeah, that way you can see that. Yeah, if you could click on that.
Yeah.
So here, this. So here, if you see the upgrade job and the upgrade itself failed. So the cluster is like failing to downgrade versus a miscellaneous test failure after that. So these are the things that we kind of pay more attention to.
Yep.
Cool. Did you have any more things to show, Mohammed?
I guess now this is the question was how do we figure out with the test grid, and I guess that's the test grid and the triage sheet as well, which actually helps you to figure out stuff. I think this can be this is definitely can be helpful for a developer to go and dig into issues as well. So I think this is something that needs to be told to people like you. Try to learn how to read this information and all that stuff. And I think guide would be helpful because I don't think we have a guide as such about the test grid, do we?
Not like a step-by-step. There's definitely README and everything, but not a step-by-step instruction on how to click and how to like drill down failures.
I guess that's something that could be helpful because it's a tool that is, it's a tool and people should know how to use the tool and figure out what broke where.
The only other thing that I wanted to show, not related to test grid itself, was like this actually came up from Mohammad's question this morning as to how do you know which SIG or who owns like a test change. This particular test started failing. How do we know who to assign the bug to? One way, Mohammed, do you want to stop sharing? I can try sharing my screen quickly.
Sure.
Let me try sharing. Okay, I think this is what it is. Can you all see my screen? Cool. So this is what I've been doing. Maybe there's a better way to do this. If so, Aaron or whoever knows this, please let me know. How do I move this one? Okay, cool. So one thing of this morning, Mohammed was asking us if I see this new job here failing. For example, if you go to blocking, this particular one, he wanted to know who should I assign this issue to. One way you could do that is if this is not very clear, like it's not very clear which SIG owns this. I generally go to prow config. So prow is our continuous testing environment that we use for all the OSS tests. So if you go to Kubernetes test infra, there's this under prow, there's a folder called prow, and under that there's a config.yaml. This is like this huge file. Test infra is now, SIG test infra is working on splitting this down now to a specific SIG, so it's more maintainable. So unless that's completely done, until that's done, you can still go to test infra prow config.yaml, and all the test continuous test runs, they are defined here as separate blocks. So generally what I do is I just look at the blame or history on the file and just look for this particular job. So if I do package, I just search by the name of the test. Yeah, so, and then I know this is somewhere in. Yeah, so here, I'm able to see that here's the name of the thing. This was added by, say, whoever last touched this. Maybe that person has is not really responsible for the failure, but at least I know where to go and I know where to start my tracking from. If you're not able to find the mapping easily here, yet another place to go is your test grid config. This is also under test infra test grid config.yaml. This directly corresponds to the names here, like Bazel test. You'll be able to find one block here that says Bazel test, and there are many more. But then it tells you, like, here, this is the name of the continuous job, and it corresponds to this particular tab in test grid. So for everything, you'll find like a mapping. So that way, it's easy to like do a history or a blame on that, and then look at who you can go and at least start talking about the failures. So that's something I do, which I find useful. So yeah, if I can stop sharing. No, I don't know how to do that.
It's on the top view options. Whatever.
Oh, there it is. No, I moved it down to. Oh, there you go. Cool. That's it. We got through all the technical stuff right now, technical hurdles. Cool. That brings us almost to the end. Any questions, anybody? Awesome.
Quick question. What was the other tool called? The test triage thing? Can somebody drop a link to that into the document, please? And then I have a second question for the test grid. For failing tests, we saw before the actual grid elements were red. And then we saw on the left side the name of the tests. I don't know, overall and others. And before I saw that only a couple of those titles were red, while the tests themselves seem to were read all the way down, if you see what I mean. I'm wondering what is the difference between the title being read versus the actual field in the test grid being read.
Again, I don't know the exact limits, but then from what I've seen is the entire tab becomes red only if there's sustained failure. If there is like, at least in my experience, I've seen like 2-3 or so runs where the test kind of is failing, then that's when the entire tab flips to being red.
So it's like a flake versus a permanent failure.
Yeah. And the reverse is also true. Sometimes the test will get fixed, but the tab will still remain red for like few runs before it just brings it out of the failure state. I don't know exactly how many runs. I think that's also configurable in test grid, the config. But yeah, it's just a visual cue of if it's a continuous failure or a flake.
I've got a question. So how would a new contributor get involved with SIG release?
Okay, I was a new contributor. The way I got involved was I started attending the SIG release team meeting, and there's a Slack channel, the SIG release channel, that you can join, where we talk about both the release team items and also general SIG release charter and work items there. There's also a bi-weekly SIG release meeting that happens Tuesdays, I think 2 p.m. PST. If you go to the SIG release GitHub page, you'll find links to the weekly meetings, to Slack channel, to our calendar and everything. So I would highly encourage joining the Slack and then seeing what might interest you, and then working with folks there. Tim or Aaron, Stephen, anybody else has more insights into this? Please.
Yeah, I mean, you summed it up pretty well. We're
up at all hours of the day, honestly. So if you're hanging out in SIG release, we're happy to give you more information on Slack. I have a little blurb that I put together for new contributors for the release team specifically that I can link you to. Sorry, I didn't see who said that. So.
Yeah, sure. I'm actually in the Slack channel, so if you could just link it
cool.
there, that would be.
Yeah, totally. I'll link it to you.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Cool. Any more questions? If not, thanks, Mohammed. Thanks for working through the technical snacks and getting us through. And thanks everybody else for dialing in. We will meet next week and meanwhile catch up on Slack. Thank you.
Thanks for running the meeting, Aisha, and for everybody else who is sharing information there on Test Grid and talking about workflows. It's really great sharing information like that.
One question, guys, before we drop. Are we doing one tomorrow earlier? We're doing a Tuesday one as well, right? Okay, just checking.
Yep.
Cool.
Happy Monday, everyone.
Later.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Jim, did you have anything?